Bienvenue à Montreal.
Welcome to Montreal, where we're here for the reopening of Stade Saputo.
And a look at the biggest games on the MLS docket this weekend, next on The Daily. Hey everybody, happy Friday. Welcome to a special edition of The Daily here with Greg Lawless. I'm Nick Fershaw, and we are in Montreal, Quebec for the opening of Stade Saputo, the new home for the Montreal Impact. Greg, we've been here for about 24 hours. We've gotten to talk to a lot of people, including Jody Saputo, Jesse Marsh, and some of the Impact players. There is a buzz going on right behind us because they are still finishing up the final touches for this stadium, which is going to open up on Saturday against the Seattle Sounders, but a lot of excitement about this new digs.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joey Saputo, you could see it on his face when we spoke to him yesterday, just the pride to have this stadium reopening. As they say, they're coming back home because this is where they've been for many years. Until they moved into MLS, they had to spend a couple of games over at the Olympic Stadium, which is actually just right over there. And, you know, now they're coming back here. They're expecting a sold-out crowd. The Ultras are extremely excited about this in particular. And it's a neat little stadium. There's a bunch of cool little things about it.
And that game is 7:30 p.m. Eastern on TSN2 up in Canada and MLS Live down in the United States. It's a tough one up against the Seattle Sounders. What do you expect from the game itself?
Well, you know, I think the thing for Montreal is that they're going to have to feed on the energy of the fans and the opening of this stadium. For Seattle, no Ozzie Alonso. He's out with suspension. So that's a hole in the middle that they're going to have to try and fix. I think the key for Seattle is Eddie Johnson. Can he find his form? We actually saw him out on the streets last night getting some dinner before, while we were out as well. And I think that Montreal are going to have to figure out how to stop him. They have some good news in Bernardo Corradi's announcing that he's going to stay through the end of the season. They have a verbal agreement that he will stay through the end of the season. So maybe that's another thing that they can feed off. A lot of energy for this Impact team. We'll get it through.
Make sure you check out the latest edition of Extra Time Radio. We talked to Joey Saputo, the owner of the Montreal Impact, as well as Jesse Marsh, the head coach. You can find that on iTunes and Buzzsprout. Next up, a look at two big games for some brand new head coaches in MLS. Let's start with the Philadelphia Union and interim head coach John Hackworth, who takes over for Peter Novak. His debut on Saturday. Philadelphia at home against DC United, 7 p.m. Eastern on Galavision. John Hackworth's been through this before. He's filled in for Peter Novak, but this is a tough game for him.
It is a tough game because let's not forget DC United are in first place right now and they're feeling pretty confident. In fact, they're so confident that their head coach Ben Olsen came out and said there's a target on our backs now, which is amazing considering what DC United, the struggles they had last year. For John Hackworth in Philadelphia, I like what Hackworth is saying. He comes right out and shows his confidence. He says, I am not Peter Novak. Expect some changes. And those changes will come both on the field and also, I think, in a mentality right now. There was a little bit of Danny Califf, actually, the former Union player, said, it'll be nice to see whether there's some, quote, honesty in that club now, which is a really interesting word that he used. And I think Hackworth has the respect of his players, and that's going to be important for them.
There should be some changes as well for Paul Mariner, the former New England Revolution assistant. He's going to make his debut as the head coach for Toronto FC on Saturday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern at Sporting Kansas City. You can catch it on MLS Live. Are we going to see a formation switch? We know all about Aaron Vinter and the 4-3-3. What's Paul Mariner going to do?
Well, Mariner has been very coy about that. He hasn't said anything about whether there will be a switch. And a lot of people like to talk about it. He hasn't said what he wants to do. Everyone is expecting that he'll go with a 4-4-2. I also thought it was interesting what Mariner came out and said, yes, we can make the playoffs, but I'm a realist and it's going to be very difficult. I think there will be some changes in this. He believes he has the right players. I think the main change will be in the mentality. He said they have to come out and fight for 90 minutes for this club. And it's a question of, quote, enthusiasm. That was the word he used. He wanted to see more enthusiasm from his players.
A new era for both these teams, the Philadelphia Union and Toronto FC, but it's going to be tough. A tough couple openers for both those teams this weekend. Well, headed down to Texas, one of the best rivalries in the league, the Houston Dynamo and FC Dallas rekindle things on Saturday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2. Catch a live chat on MLSsoccer.com. Greg, two teams that maybe haven't performed up to expectations. You look at FC Dallas, riddled with injuries this year, and the Houston Dynamo haven't quite matched that form from MLS Cup last year, but they're getting Jeff Cameron back this weekend.
They get Jeff Cameron back, and they're also at home, and they're going to do just fine at home, I think. Their record, 4-4-4, is something that has to do with, I think, a lot that they played all those games on the road. FC Dallas, on the other hand, I think this 2-week break will help them a lot. They've started to maybe get a little healthier. Andrew Jacobson is the key for them in the midfield. Can he get into the attack a little bit more? And an interesting little thing that came out just yesterday about Shellis Hyman, the coach for FC Dallas, talking about Dominic Kinnear from the Houston Dynamo. He said, I actually recruited Dominic Kinnear many, many years ago when Kinnear was obviously a tremendously talented player coming out in California. So a little bit of history between these two.
Two of the better coaches in the league going at it, Houston and FC Dallas. 8:30 p.m. Eastern on Saturday night. You can catch it on ESPN2 and a live chat on MLSsoccer.com. One last game on national television this weekend. It's a good one. The Chicago Fire at home against the New York Red Bulls on Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern on the NBC Sports Network. Catch a live chat on MLSsoccer.com. A pair of old rivals going at it. But the news this week, there could be a new player on the horizon for the New York Red Bulls.
Yeah, Eric Soler, the GM for the Red Bulls, coming out and saying, we are pursuing a third designated player, which I think a lot of people expected them to do, especially if you get a DP in the middle of the season, the cost is a little bit lower. So maybe not a surprise there. He did come out and say, we're not going after Michael Ballack, the Bayer Leverkusen midfielder who's recently been doing some analysis for ESPN on their Euro 2012 coverage. He has not said anything about Stephen Ireland, there's lots of rumors that the Aston Villa playmaker will be headed to New York. Nothing going there. They say it's a $4 or $5 million transfer fee just to get him from Villa, but that Villa are willing to let him go. Another interesting name on the horizon now, Andrei Shevchenko. Okay, he's 36 years old, but he still knows how to score. We saw that when he scored 2 goals for Ukraine a couple of days ago. And he said to Grant Wall from Sports Illustrated just yesterday, he said, I would like to play in the United States. My wife is American. I like America. And, quote, football in the United States is on its way to coming to challenge baseball and basketball as one of the biggest sports in America. So could Shevchenko be headed to New York? That's another question that people will be thinking about.
A lot of MLS fans might remember Shevchenko was actually on that Chelsea team that played the MLS All-Stars in 2006 at the All-Star Game. It was a big deal when Shevchenko came over to the United States. We'll see if he comes again. That does it for us, this special edition of The Daily from Montreal. Don't forget the opening of Stade Saputo on Saturday night, the Impact and the Seattle Sounders, 7:30 p.m. Eastern on TSN2 in Canada and on MLS Live down in the United States. Enjoy the weekend.